Good morning. You may have noticed the youthful swagger with which I leapt to the stage this morning. That's because I was out running the 5K this morning. Got up at 6:15 so I could be down here to get my registration badge. 21:09, I ran 3.1 miles in 30 minutes and 3 seconds, which has a nice symmetry to it, 30:03 this morning. So I was happy with that. When I was 50 years old, I was principal at Bales Intermediate School in Friendswood, Texas. And for some reason, I decided I wanted to take up running. I think I was inspired by the Run Club. Every Thursday afternoon, the students would go out after school and they just run. Just run, run, run. Kids are like that. You know, they start at about age 3, they start running, and they don't stop until about 18, 19, not like that. So these kids love to run. I always trying to figure out a way to put Run Club before school, so we could get them out there and let them run off some of that energy before they went into the classroom. But we could never figure out how to make the schedule work. So they ran Thursday afternoons after school, and on my 50th birthday, I decided to have a 5K run. 5K at 50, and I did. I made up a cool t-shirt with my cartoon caricature of myself out running, 5K for 50, and I invited kids from the school. We had 70, 80 kids come out and run 5K with me on my 50th birthday. And I was shocked that I even finished. I hadn't run a mile probably since I was 18 years old. So to run a little over 3 miles at 50, I was amazed at what I could do. And so I kept running, and I moved 5K to 10K at some point in there. I went ran the 10K rodeo run in Houston. Any of you from Houston in here? 10K rodeo run. I didn't realize, I thought 10K stood for 10 kilometers. It actually stands for 10,000 runners. So you almost have to run 5K just to get down to the start line because the parking is so bad. They have 10,000 runners, and you run during the right before the rodeo parade is when you run. So you run through the streets. There's all these people out there, and at first you think they're out there for you. They're all yelling, screaming, yeah, go, go, and they're really saying, go, get off the streets. The parade's about to start. So we run through the streets and out and around and back in 10K, 6.2 miles. I got a little nervous that first year because there was a guy running behind me with a shovel. He thought we were the parade. So eventually I got back on that one, and when I was getting ready to retire from being a principal in 2008, the wellness staff at the school, it's the same group that set up the 5K at 50 for me, they came to me and said, we want to give you a retirement present. This was in May of 2008. We want to give you a retirement present, but we want to check with you first, see if you'll use it. And I said, well, what is it? And they said, it's a registration for the half marathon in Houston, the Chevron half. And I got to doing the math on that. It's not 10K, it's actually 21K, 13.1 miles. So I took that gift. And I will tell you, it's a gift that keeps on giving, because it just kind of hangs over you. The half marathon wasn't until January, so I had about 8 months to think about it. So I thought about it, and then come November, I started running to get ready for it. And my daughter flew into town from Miami, and she ran with me, and we ran in a little over 2 hours and 15 minutes, which was exciting. The interesting part about that was that the half marathon course, 13 miles, runs parallel part of the time to the full marathon course, which is 26.2 miles. So I was chugging toward the finish after being out there on the course about 2 hours, and I heard all this cheering. And of course, I thought it was for me. And I looked over to my left, and the marathon course was on my left, and the runner who was in first place, an Ethiopian runner who was in first place in the marathon, just came running by me like I was tied to a post. He had run 25 miles, while I had run 12. So I still have something to shoot for. But my daughter and I had so much fun that the next year we ran in Miami, at the half in Miami, 13 miles. And then this past spring, we went up to New York City. My daughter lives up there now. And we ran the New York City half, and we were still running in Central Park. I couldn't believe how big Central Park was. We were still running in Central Park 8 miles into the course. We started in Central Park. We ran in Central Park 8 miles. And then we came out, we went down 8th Avenue to Times Square, ran right through Times Square, down Broadway, and ended up down at Ground Zero, actually down at the World Trade Center. So this year we're signed up for Washington, D.C. If you want to join us, I'd love to take your name afterward and send you some information. 13.1 in Washington, D.C. in March. But the really nice thing I found about running, first of all, this is one of the reasons runners run. You just have to check this out. This is called the swag bag. So this is what we got this morning. First I got this beautiful medal. George West 5K, right there it is. The koozie. The t-shirt. You know, after a while you don't run for t-shirts anymore. How many Go Vomit green t-shirts does the person need? Is what I want to know. Sorry about that. They must have had a sale on this color. Here's another koozie. I don't know how many koozies you need either. Little water bag. ConocoPhillips was the sponsor this morning. Water bottle. This one I can't figure out. Crest toothpaste. Do you think they just thought my breath was bad? What? I don't know. And then we have, there's an H-E-B snack bar. Oh my gosh, another koozie. They must be wanting us to buy beer this weekend, do you think? Here's a magnet for the refrigerator from the Chamber of Commerce. Here's a magnet for the refrigerator from Pollock Supply. Are they right here? Didn't I see a sign this morning? They're right here. Yeah. And then there's pens and mints and candy and a coupon for something. Fitness center. Well, what I ended up finding out was you don't really run for the swag bag and you don't run for the t-shirts. You run because at the end it makes you feel really alive. Makes you feel really alive. Today we ran out that direction. You also run because you get to hang around with young people. I was at the starting line this morning, there were all these young people, and then the horn went off, and they were gone. They were gone, and then I ran pretty much by myself, but about halfway through the race, this young lady, she's probably 12 years old, 13 years old, she was slowing down and I was speeding up, and we ran together out on that side of town till we got to the cemetery. The run this morning went right through the cemetery. And as soon as we got to the gates of the cemetery, she picked up her pace. She ran like the wind through the cemetery. And I just, you know, at my age, when you go to the cemetery, it's like visiting family and friends. So, but she didn't feel that way. She wanted to get out of that cemetery. So she ran like the wind. She ran around and got out of the cemetery. And when I came out of the cemetery, she was knelt over like this, out of breath. And I said, come on, girl, let's go. And she ran on in with me. But, yeah, I think you run because it makes you feel young. And at 59, that's a good thing. Another thing I like about running is you run by age group. So you're encouraged to get older. I'm 59, and so next year I'll be running in the 60s group, 60 to 69. I expect to get more medals next year because I'm running against people older than me. This morning I was running against people 10 years younger than I am. So one of the only places that you run, yeah.
There is a vehicle parked in the EMS station over there. If it is your vehicle, you need to get it moved. Thank you.
Thank you. So anyway, I don't know where I was. Where was I? Oh yeah, the age group. There were people this morning hiding the age on their tag. They write it on there, you know. And if you run a lot, you get used to being people knowing how old you are. And the older you get, the prouder you are. When we ran in Houston, there was a woman running the half marathon that was 86 years old. My daughter said, I want to be that woman when I'm 86 years old. So anyway, I want to tell you a story about running. This story about running when you're little. I was the youngest, I am the youngest of 3 boys, Josh, Judd, and Jay. My brother Josh lived big. He had big ideas, and he had big actions, and he talked big. Josh always talked big. And I can remember being little. How old were you? 6? I might have been 5 or 6, I think. when this happened, but there was a storm that blew through, and I remember standing out in the yard. There was a willow tree that had blown down in the storm. And there was, in that willow tree, my father had built a platform that was like a treehouse platform that my brothers would go up. I was too young to climb up there, but I had been looking forward to it. At 6 years old, I really wanted to be able to climb that tree and get up into that platform, and now the tree was down and the platform was gone. But my brother Josh, the oldest, wouldn't stand for that. He felt like he needed to have another tree house. So he went down into the tree line near our house, and he figured if one tree could blow down with the tree house, then you ought to build a tree house around more than one tree. So he found 5 trees that were growing up together, and he put a platform up there that connected those 5 trees. Laid the boards out, and he pretty much did it by himself. He was about 11 at the time, I would say. And he and my brother climbed up there and hauled that wood up there and put that platform up. And my father went up at one point just to check and make sure they were going to be safe, and it passed inspection. And so my brothers and I sat up there on that platform, and we were pretty satisfied, Judd and I, but Josh wasn't satisfied. He felt like we needed walls in that treehouse, so he built walls and put a roof on it. And we were pretty happy with that, because now we could go up in the treehouse even when it was raining. But my brother Josh wasn't satisfied with that. He put a trap door in the roof so he could go out the ceiling and sit up on the sort of the second floor platform and look out on the world. And so we sat up there on the roof and looked out on our world. And Judd and I were pretty happy, but Josh wasn't satisfied. He thought, well, we got this floor up here, we can put it in the second floor. So he built a second floor on this tree house and another roof, and by the time he finished that, we put a trap door in the ceiling, and we went up on the second floor roof, and from there we could see the outdoor theater. It was about a mile away. We felt pretty smart. We could actually watch the movie for free. And at the time it seemed pretty small, but it was kind of like watching a movie on a cell phone now. You've seen people doing that? It was about that big. We could see that screen down there about a mile away. Of course, we couldn't get any sound. They were all silent movies, but we would lay up there on the roof and look down there and watch the movie at night at the drive-in theater. My brother Josh still wasn't satisfied, though. He put a porch on that treehouse, and then from the porch there was a monkey bridge that went across. It was a 3-rope monkey bridge that went across to another set of trees, so we could escape through the back if we were attacked at the front. That was his idea. And eventually, about 5 or 6 trees to the west of our treehouse, he built an advanced scouting platform where you could climb up there. There's just room for one person to sit up there on a platform in that tree and see if we could see the enemy coming, so we could warn the people back in the tree fort. He connected the advanced scouting platform, this was before cell phones, of course, with a string and 2 tin cans so we could talk to each other. Well, about this time of year, when I was maybe 6 or 7 years old, we were sitting up on the roof of the second floor of that treehouse, and we looked down towards where the movie theater was, and between the movie theater and our house, there was a man that lived there named Mr. Petrakis. Mr. Petrakis, I was told by my brothers, was the meanest person in the world. The meanest person in the world. First of all, he had a bulldog that he kept chained up in his backyard. He didn't let anyone cross his property. My brothers said that Mr. Petrakis had furrows in his brow that were deep as the Grand Canyon. And they were like solid stone furrows. They said that he had eyes that were so deep and narrow that you could, if you looked at him long enough, you could fall into those eyes. And they said if he ever smiled, his face would break, just kind of explode. So we were sitting up there on the top of the treehouse, and we looked out in that direction. One of the things about Petrakis was that he always had a pumpkin patch. He had a big pumpkin patch in the back of his house, and on that night with the moon full, we could look and we could see the moon shining on the top of those pumpkins that were sitting in the patch. Large pumpkins, medium-sized pumpkins, small pumpkins, all these pumpkins shining in that harvest moon in that patch in Mr. Petrakis' house. And I got a little excited about those pumpkins. And I turned to my brothers and I said, we ought to go down there and get us some pumpkins. And my brothers smiled and they said, that's a good idea, Jay. Why don't you do that? Well, when you're the youngest, it's too late. I realized right then it was too late to back out. And I hemmed and hawed for a while and I said, okay, I'll do that. How about Friday night? So my brothers kind of got me all worked up about all the things that could happen to me if I went into that pumpkin patch, but I promised they were going to hold me to my promise. So on Friday night, we were sitting up there on the roof, and I said, finally worked up my nerve, and I said, okay, here we go. I climbed down the tree, I went down the driveway. I got to a place in the fence where you could get over the fence, and I started heading into Petrakis' property. And as I got going into the property, I began to run. Because, I don't know, I guess my heart was beating and I was excited and I just felt like I had to do this quickly. I had to do this deed quickly. So I began to run and I was running across the fields and I got to the edge of the pumpkin patch and there was a little dip. And when I hit that dip, I fell forward and my hand went into something soft and gushy. Ew. That's what I said. Yuck. I couldn't believe it. It was awful. You can help me with this. Your part is yuck. Can you say that? Yuck. So yuck.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when I say yuck, your job is to say yeah. Let's practice. Yeah. Yeah. That is so disgusting. Yuck. Yuck. It's halfway decomposed. Yuck. Yuck. That is so disgusting. Yuck. Yuck. It's really, really gross. Oh, touch it first, I dare you. Don't poke it with a stick. Watch out, 'cause it might scare you. I'm going to be sick. You broke the mucus lining. It's oozing greenish juice. It smells decayed and slimy. Look out! It's getting loose. Oh, yuck. Yuck. That is so disgusting. Yuck. Yuck. It's halfway decomposed. Yuck. Yuck. That is so disgusting. Yuck. Yuck. It's really, really gross. It's slobbering toward us. It's sucking at my shoe. It's not Tyrannosaurus. Don't let it get on you. That putrid stuff is growing. Maybe we better run. No! Come back! I'm only fooling. We're having so much fun. Oh, yuck. Yuck. That is so disgusting. Yuck. Yuck. It's halfway decomposed. Yuck. Yuck. That is so disgusting. Yuck. Yuck. It's really, really gross. And it was really gross. I had this sort of slimy, gooey, rotten pumpkin juice on my hands from where I fell. And so I did what any kid would do. I got up and I wiped it off on my pants. And when I got it wiped off on my pants, I looked around because I was seeing if I had disturbed the silence of the night. And I was safe. The dog hadn't started barking. The lights hadn't come on. No one must have heard. And so I walked into that pumpkin patch. And I started to pick up pumpkins. I picked up big pumpkins. I picked up medium-sized pumpkins. I found small pumpkins, kind of like these. I found all these pumpkins. And I just kind of held them in my arms. And when I couldn't hold anymore, I thought, this is enough. This will show my brothers that I'm brave enough to do this task. And so I turned to head back towards the fence. And when I turned, there was this one pumpkin that was teetering on the top. And it slid off and it hit the ground with a big thud. And the next sound I heard was, "Roof." Roof, roof. It was that bulldog at the back door. And when it started barking, the light came on the back porch. And the door opened, and there, standing on the back porch, was Mr. Petracus. And he saw me in the moonlight out there in his pumpkin patch, and he shouted, "Hey!" And I started to run. And when I looked back over my shoulder, I saw that he was running too. But I wasn't afraid because I was much younger than Mr. Petracus, and I know how it is with youth. Youth loves to run. But he wasn't carrying 15 pumpkins. I was carrying 15 pumpkins. So as I was running, I was looking over my shoulder, and I realized he was catching up with me. So I started to shed the pumpkins. I dropped the big ones first, a couple of them, and then I kept running, and I looked back, and he was still catching up with me. So I started shedding the medium-sized pumpkins, dropping them down there on the ground. And I kept running, and I looked back, and he was catching up with me. And so I just had a few small pumpkins left, and I ran to the fence. And when I got to the fence, I realized I didn't know how I was going to get over that fence holding those pumpkins. And I turned around, and he was there. There was Mr. Petracus staring me down, me with these pumpkins in my hands. And then he spoke. He asked the question, "What are you going to do with my pumpkins?" And I was not very old at the time, but I knew that the answer to that question could mean the difference between life and death. What am I going to do with these pumpkins? So I said to Mr. Petracus, these pumpkins, with these pumpkins, I'm going to juggle. And he stepped back one step, and I stepped towards the fence one step, and I began to juggle those pumpkins just like this in front of Mr. Petracus. And he looked at me for a long time. And then I noticed that the furrows in his brow got a little shallower. They weren't like the Grand Canyon anymore. They were more like the Nueces River running through his forehead, those furrows in his brow. So I decided I'd just keep juggling. I had some tricks I was going to show him. Now that was a long time ago. I don't even know if I can still do these tricks, but I'll try. I did this one right here like this. And I noticed that his eyes weren't quite as narrow, his eyes weren't quite as deep, and I didn't feel like I could fall into them. So I thought I'd keep going, so I did. I kept going, I kept juggling, and I tried one of these. Whoa, whoa! And I looked at Mr. Petracus, and right here on the edges of his mouth, I noticed they were beginning to turn up. And I knew we'd come to the moment that I had to make a decision. Because if he smiled and his face exploded, I could get hit with the shrapnel. So just as he began to smile, I threw the pumpkins into the air, all three at once. I scrambled over the fence, I jumped onto the driveway, and I started running. I headed up that driveway as fast as I could run. You could hear the ping of the gravel coming out from underneath my tennis shoes as I ran up that driveway. And when I got to the tree house, I scrambled up the tree and into the tree house, and my brothers were there in anticipation. And they said, "We heard the dog bark. Did you bring us some pumpkins?" And I was empty-handed. I didn't have one pumpkin left to show them what I had done. And I was sad for a moment. All that I went through, and I didn't have a pumpkin to show my brothers. But I did know something that I didn't ever know before that. And that was, I knew something my brothers didn't know. If Mr. Petracus were to smile, his face would not explode. And when you're the youngest of three boys, to have some information that they don't have, that they don't know, that's pretty important. And the last thing I can tell you that I learned, I didn't even really know until this morning, but that was the first training session that I ever did in preparation of the George West Storyfest 5K walk and run that evening.